Hello friends, in this video lecture we will see hard disk drive and its structure. जनरली जब भी हार्ड डिस्क के बारे में मेंशन करते हैं तब हम सिर्फ दो ही वर्ड्स यूज करते हैं, दैट इज हार्ड डिस्क. We do not use three words, hard disk drive. Basically hard disk is having three words, hard disk drive. So to understand hard disk drive we have to understand these three words, hard disk drive. So whenever there is something which is difficult to break and bend, so in that case we call it as a hard component or simply hard. Such component is there in the hard disk drive. That component is known as disk platter. अगर आप हार्ड डिस्क का स्ट्रक्चर देखते हो तो ये जो कंपोनेंट है, this component is known as disk platter. So this platter is made up of aluminum. That's why it is difficult to break or bend. So that's why we call that disk platter as a hard. Then second word is there, that is disk. Whenever something is circular, we call it as a disk. If we see the hard disk drive externally, it looks like rectangular in shape like this. But actual component inside the hard disk drive, that is disk platter, is circular. That's why we are having this word disk. And what is the meaning of drive? That something or the component which is able to perform its task independently on its own platform, doesn't require any other platform. So that is known as drive. So collectively, with the help of these three words, hard disk drive, we call that complete device, complete component as a hard disk drive. Let's see the structure of hard disk drive. सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट कौन सा है यहाँ पे? डिस्क प्लैटर. द डिस्क प्लैटर इज बेसिकली डिफिकल्ट टू ब्रेक, difficult to bend, which is made up of aluminum, or that is disk platter. And this disk platter is rotated here along with this axis. This axis is known as spindle. Okay. And who rotates this spindle? This spindle is rotated by one motor. That motor is known as spindle motor. So below that spindle there is spindle motor, and all these components are mounted there on this chassis. This chassis or this component is known as mounting chassis. Mounting chassis or base casting. That is mounting chassis and the mounting chassis or base casting. And this part belongs to actuator. This portion is known as actuator axis. This is actuator axis. This is known as arm actuator, and this one is known as a read write head. So this read write head is basically responsible to read the instructions from the disk platter or to write instruction to the disk platter. And this complete mechanism of actuator is controlled there with the help of logic board, which is located there on the back side. And there is connection between logic board and this actuator axis with the help of this cable. This cable is known as a ribbon cable. Okay. Means this ribbon cable acts as an interface between this actuator mechanism and the logic board, which is located there on the back side. We will see the structure of hard disk drive in the video again. And this interface, this part is known as SCSI interface. SCSI interface, that is small computer system interface, and these pins are known as jumper pins. Jumper pins along with jumper or jumper pins, and these pins are used there for the power connection, for power supply. So again, there is a provision of air filter. So you can see small bag is here on this corner. This bag is basically used as a air filter. Okay. So let's see the components of hard disk drive. Mounting chassis we have seen, that is black color chassis, which is used to mount various components. To mount various components, we use this mounting chassis. Spindle on which this platter rotates with the help of spindle motor. This platter is the important component of hard disk drive. Actuator axis, arm actuator, and read write head. This belong to actuator mechanism. Logic board is there, that is interface between the motherboard and the hard disk drive. Ribbon cable, which is interface between the actuator and the logic board. SCSI interface. SCSI is small computer system interface. Jumper pins, air filter, and one more is there, that is power connector. Okay, that is for the power supply. So these are components of hard disk drive. In video, we can see all these components. This is hard disk drive. This one is the upper portion of hard disk drive. This one is the lower portion, or we can call it back side. This is front side, and this black color component is known as mounting chassis. Let's try to open the hard disk drive. We will see what is there inside the hard disk drive by selecting proper tool. This might be the cover on this screw. Let's try to open the cover first. We have to free all the screws one by one by selecting proper tool. It takes hardly 1 to 2 minutes. कवर को ओपन कर लेते हैं. ये जो पोर्शन है ये डिस्प्लेटर है. ये स्पिंडल मोटर और ये एक्चुएटर एक्सिस, आर्म and read write head. Read write head is used to read the instructions from the displatter. और ये एक्सिस का पार्ट है, एक्चुएटर एक्सिस का, और इसका कनेक्शन जो है वो लॉजिक बोर्ड को है थ्रू रिबन केबल. ये जो है दिस वन इज इंटरफेस. दिस इज बैक साइड. ये है लॉजिक बोर्ड और ये है स्पिंडल मोटर का पार्ट. स्पिंडल मोटर का फंक्शन डिस्प्लेटर को रोटेट, देखो कैसे रोटेट होती है. ये पोर्शन है एक्चुएटर एक्सिस, आर्म एक्चुएटर एंड रीड राइट हेड. स्पिंडल मोटर और ये एंड दिस पोर्शन इज नोन एज स्पिंडल ऑन विच displatter rotates. This is spindle, a read write head along with actuator axis. This is displatter. It is very hard to break and bend, इसलिए इसे हार्ड डिस्क कहते हैं, हार्ड डिस्क ड्राइव. यह है स्पिंडल और इसके पीछे स्पिंडल मोटर. दिस पार्ट इज नोन एज स्पिंडल, जो मैंने पहले बताया आपको. स्पिंडल अलॉन्ग विथ स्पिंडल मोटर, मतलब स्पिंडल मोटर स्पिंडल को रोटेट करती है. And with let's see the structure of logic board that is responsible to execute the instructions given by the motherboard. और ये जो pins है, that pins are known as interface between the motherboard and logic board. You can see various ICs are there on the motherboard. This is spindle motor. ये IC जो है that is interface between logic board and the actuator. Let's open the IC interface between the logic board and the actuator axis. This is IC interface between the logic board and the actuator axis. Actuator has three parts: actuator axis, arm actuator, and the read write head. This is actuator axis cover, so we can rotate the read write head. यहाँ पे एक छोटी बैग है that acts as a air filter. और ये होगा हार्ड डिस्क ड्राइव का स्ट्रक्चर.